Things that go wrong when your Mercedes sits. So today I wanted to look at some major systems in your car that can suffer problems when the car sits for too long, and explain to you what those problems will be, and also the effect that they have on the car, and how you can deal with them if you're a new owner or if you're a long-term owner of some cars that sit around all the time. Like me, unfortunately, I do the thing that I'm not supposed to do. It's like a doctor who's an alcoholic or a drug addict or something. You know, I never keep my cars operating consistently like they should be. Anyway, let's look at some of these things. So, first of all, fuel systems. If you have a fuel system that sits around for 4 or 5 years with ethanol-based fuel in it, and you already have an old tank with maybe some rust starting already, the first thing that you need to be aware of is the possibility of the tank rusting. This seems to be more of an issue on some cars than others. So 108 sedans, 111 sedans, you know, coupes, cabriolets, tank seems to rust pretty easily. 107's another car where the tank seems to rust out like crazy. Sometimes we see this on 116's. We don't see it as much on 126's. Now, 201s, 124s, so that I did have a 124 once with a really rusty gas tank. Generally, though, if you have an older car that's been sitting for a long time, even if the car is up and running, you should assume that there's some rust in the tank. We had a 190 SL come in a couple of years ago, and the car was running reasonably well, and we took the carburetor bowls off, the float bowls off, and guess what we found? We found rust accumulating in the bottom of the bowl. What do you do? You know, what do? You change the tank. Thankfully, Mercedes has new gas tanks available. It is preferable to install a new tank as opposed to cleaning an old one. I usually draw my line for the purchase price in a gas tank at about $1,500. If the tank is less than $1,500, I want a new one. If it's over $1,500, then I start looking at my options. My next option is a used tank. My last option might be cleaning and coating the inside of the tank. Oh, that's Anne. That's Jeffrey and Anne. The next problem that occurs when these cars start to sit around is that you can have head gasket degradation. This is particularly a problem on 6-cylinder Mercedes engines and 300 SEL 6.3s, where not only does the head gasket degrade, but the cooling system rots the cylinder head out. And in this case, you're going to have to do some deck welding and machining. Sometimes you might see little lines appearing in the side of the head. I know that my friend Jamie had to deal with this issue on his 1959 219, which had under 15,000 original miles. He still had to pull the head and change the gasket because the head gasket had deteriorated and was leaving little white streaks in the side of the motor. The third thing that you have to watch out for is sludge in the oil pan. If your oil pan has not been opened in a long time, it's very typical that the oil will rise to the top and other things like grease and dirt and particles will sink to the bottom, and these will block the oil pickup screen, meaning as soon as you start the car, instead of oil being sucked in, you're going to have sludge and grease and grime, which will block the oil passages, causing your car to run without oil, essentially grenading the engine. I have a friend who has a bunch of 123s. I don't know if he watches these videos or not, but right now, Dave, if you're watching, you owe me a fuel pressure gauge. Anyway, he had a 79 300D and he started it without draining the oil. And there was so much sludge in there, it blocked the engine, oil passages, and the car spun a bearing within a few minutes. So there you go. That's what happens. A fourth thing that you really have to watch out for with Mercedes that have been sitting for a long time is restricted brake lines. The insides of the brake line swell shut, meaning as soon as you apply the brakes, fluid forces its way into the caliper but can't travel back. This is a major issue for cars that have been sitting around for 10 years or more. usually 20 years, but sometimes we get cars that are even in service when this issue occurs. And the rule of thumb is the further away the caliper is from the master cylinder, the greater the chances of it being restricted. So if you have a left-hand drive car, your rear right brake hose is probably going to be swelled shut. Here's a bonus. Here's one more item. If you've watched this far, I really hope that you've been watching this far. Diesels, the item you need to watch out for is algae formation. Algae is a major problem with diesel engine vehicles. It gets in everything. It blocks fuel systems and blocks fuel tanks and filters, but the good thing is that it's not an injection pump destroyer unless you just keep trying to force the car to run with algae. If you have a car that is full of algae, your best bet is to pull the tank and pressure wash it. Just draining and flushing the tank won't do it. So generally speaking, algae is the #1 problem on older Mercedes diesels to watch out for. Now, there's one more. Again, bonus items. Older diesels, carbon getting stuck between the valve seats and the valves. But we're going to do another video about this. So that'll give you an excuse to come back to the channel. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Tap the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up. Tell your friends who have a Mercedes. Otherwise, if you just tell your like normie friends, they'll think you're weird. And enjoy reviving your classic Mercedes Benz.